I'm Daniel Whiteside, and with me today is Kathy Brennan, with whom I have been playing in my mind with how to make all of that which was created by myself and my life partner, Gordon Stokes, and Albertine Fawn. And the three of us have been developing the understanding of the work created by Gordon Stokes and Daniel Whiteside that relates to partnering with life. What is life? Life is opportunity. Life is challenge. And how we handle our awareness and our response to the opportunity and our response to the challenge determines whether we are moving into a partnership with life, which is really oneness within ourselves and with the world around us, or whether we are allowing our negative expectations based on our past experience to move us downward to separation and to no choice. Life is opportunity. Life is what we do when confronted or faced with a challenge. And it is either going to be to make the choice when challenged for the positive possible, or it would be a simple negative standard reaction emotionally, which would take us to separation and no choice and no partnership with life. With our videographer, Achille Garnier, at the camera, here is a toast to partnering with life.
To you, Achille.
A partnership with life, partnering, the action of partner and partner together to create what? The positive possible for ourselves at any given moment. And making the choice to acknowledge and to accept that opportunity as the possibility of creating the future we want, as opposed to allowing ourselves, if we feel not accepting and are into antagonism and feel attacked, the horror story of the negative reaction going downscale to separation and no choice. So once again, here's to oneness, oneness with ourselves, within ourselves, and with life. Gordon Stokes, wonderful man, and my life partner for over 40 years, both professionally and personally, found that there were three elements that were very important to understanding our power. And our power is all about choice. The choice for a positive possible future, or the reaction, which is functionally automatic and no choice, to what we perceive as a negative challenge, which just takes us back through our own failures of past experience down to feeling that we have no choice except to stimulus response, knee-jerk, try to resist what is presented with the challenge. And those three elements are an evaluation formula for recognizing what emotion we are dealing with truly in the moment, and whether we're going upscale toward oneness or downscale to separation and no choice. And that's the usual trip that we all take emotionally. What are the three elements? A way to evaluate our emotional response or reaction in the moment when challenged or faced with a positive opportunity. And that emotional evaluation we'll take up in another section in this YouTube series. Then comes structure function, and for most people who are looking at it, this presentation, that's a whole new concept. Structure equals function. And where does that come from? What are we looking at? So taking a look at Daniel, taking a look at Kathy, taking a look at Albertine, you're looking at structures. You're looking at structures of the skull, which relate to brain activity. You're looking at features of the face, which also express brain activity or natural inclination of reaction to stressors, either negative or positive. Because the real positive stressor is to be presented with what you truly want and then feeling enough self-doubt not to move in that direction, which is a horror story that we all know. Structure function. Do you realize that looking at a human being, a human structure, in 5 seconds, you can know what to expect of that structure's function, because structure, jaws, bones, skin, hair, body shape, body balance, all of that is going to be with you from the time you were conceived until the time you die. And simply looking at an individual tells you what their structure is and how it is going to function. Then there's the third element, which is what do you do with this information? How do you make a positive choice when confronted with an opportunity or a challenge? What do you do to handle the negative emotions that you will feel if you feel that you are being attacked? Structure function. Can you really, in 5 seconds, look at a person's structure and come up with some idea about what's going on and what to expect of them? Take a look at the baby. This is a universal structure. All of us as babies had this kind of head shape, nose shape, lips. Look at the shape of the forehead. The forehead is the conscious associational thinking area of the brain. Look at the back of the skull. This is the primary visual center. What does that tell you about the baby? That tells you that what they see visually, they will associate with past experience or present example and draw some conclusions. They have a learning machine. We all had this marvelous learning machine. Primarily for an infant, it is based on what we see, we think about, and we reach some conclusions. Yes, the baby structure had a different brain functioning priority than the adult. Let's move the camera back to include the adult that's with that baby. And on the photograph, you see that the forehead is different. You see that there is much more jaw prominence. You also see that the back of the skull is not the same in my adult self as it was in the baby self. What does that mean? That means something. And that something is structure function. So we will be looking at various structures that relate to childhood, adolescence, and now. Except remember, Kathy and I mostly Kathy came upon the me, myself, and I reality. The true me is the baby structure. This is our universal reality as babies, which is we thought about what we were looking at. We thought about what we see. And that forehead of the babies that just sticks right out there. That forehead is containing imagination, originality, interest, intuition, and the shape of the skull behind the face includes telepathy, and that wonderful extension of the primary visual area has to do with what in Europe is called vision and what in the American tradition is called psychic trend. And all of that is functioning in the baby structure right now. Right now. What does that tell you about the baby's learning machine? It is consciously associating what it thinks based on what it sees and what it feels. From the adult structure, the adult's forehead that you see in the picture, the conscious associational thinking structure is still there, but it's not as prominent, so it's not the priority. Instead, memory of past experience becomes the significant feature on our first response or reaction to challenge or opportunity. You would not expect the adult head to function in the same way as the baby head because of its functioning structure. But what's really important about understanding the structure and the function is how do you deal with it in yourself and with opportunity and challenge from outside? How do you deal with it most effectively? And we'll be talking about that. Not just about baby structure and adult structure, but also about the adolescent structure, because you know, really, dears, we have three bodies and three basic times in our life. Number one is the universal structure of childhood. Conscious association, thinking about what we see and hear, but mostly what we see. Then we get a new body in adolescence, and we also get a new structure of functioning brain activity. And this is built in, this is inherent from the very beginning of our lives, from conception. That with the DNA from mommy and daddy, which combines to be our own DNA, is included the structural changes that happen in adolescence. And it's not just breasts and blood and erections and orgasms. No, it isn't. It's not just pubic hair. It's much more than that, and we'll talk about that in this series. But mostly it's focused on what do you see as your own structure? How does it function? And how can it function most effectively for your highest good, moving into a partnering with life that moves you inside and outside toward oneness. Oneness within yourself, oneness with others, oneness with the environment. That's what you're looking at in this series. So the elements in this series are the emotional roadmap of where you are taking on this voyage of life, which is coming up later. The structure function that you yourself have from the beginning as a little child through the second body, which is adolescence, to your current reality, which is functionally the yourself that you believe to exist and that you are functioning as today. And at all of those stages in the programmed genetic changes of our development physically in this life comes the reality that it is choice that is our power. Choice, that is our power to either choose the positive possible that we want to create or to simply react according to the fear, pain that we have experienced so far in our life, and to try to avoid any further fear or pain. And usually the only strong emotion that can prompt a reaction to what we don't want is anger. But anger is only a cover-up of fear and grief and guilt and indifference and separation, which is not what we want. What do we want? Well, only by choice in a moment of stress, when challenged, can we create that positive possible future. So, a major element in this series is, what do you do with your own self in terms of choice? If you are feeling victimized by life, you're missing the point entirely. What you are being victimized by is your refusal to look to create what you want, instead of looking at what you don't want and reacting according to your past experience, which is not going to provide you with all of the answers. Anger is not an answer, it is only a reaction. Fear is not an answer, it is only a reaction. Keep your focus on developing your own power. And your own power is the choice to move toward oneness and what you do want, or allowing yourself to react according to what you don't want, which will take you really down to what you don't want, which is a feeling of being a victim, feeling powerless, and feeling threatened by life itself. Your me self, universally, our me self, is primarily represented by the structure of the baby. That's the pure me. What I see, sense, but mostly what I see, and maybe hear, and maybe taste, and maybe smell, is my reality. That's what I'm thinking about. That is going to change as we identify more clearly what is our I. What is our I? Which is basically set in adolescence. That's a different structure and a different function of brain as well as body. And then the great truth, which is true of the child, me, the me self. It is true of the identity of what I believe I am based on my past experience and learning, and the trueness of the self, myself, your myself, is not your present only and is not your past. It is also your future, if you choose to focus on the possibilities of the possible positive future that you want to have. So, my dear friend Kathy, as in Kathy Brannon, this is the adolescent self of the Kathy Brannon, and the structure is different than the Kathy Brannon which you see, understanding that the Kathy Brannon as a baby had this forehead and this primary occipital area, which meant that she, like all of us, and isn't that a wonderful contrast? She, as all of us, was focused on what she saw and what she thought about based on what she saw and what she felt. This is also true for the Albertine Fawn model, which had, as a little child, this same baby forehead and the same back of the head. So, Albertine, if you will just profile to me directly, look at the back of the head. Is this like the baby head, where there is the extreme visual primary center, the back of the skull? And the answer is no. So what has happened to Albertine as she went through the me structure of the baby, which is her genetic heritage as a human being, up to now? Well, sometime along that trip of life, you decided that it was going to be conscious. What you were going to react to was conscious. The forehead is still there, the originality, the imagination, the interest, the concentration, the intuition, and as we move backward toward the rear of your skull, the telepathy of the child. But now it's focused on not feeling, it is focused on facts, information, because you're older. And now you are dealing with an awareness of yourself, which the little baby does not have, not in detail, which is wonderful. You'll also notice that Miss Fawn has a nose that is not the nose of the baby, although it's more like it than mine is, or than Kathy's is. These are changes which are programmed into growing up. It's programmed with your DNA. But the DNA is so wonderful because it knows your future. It knows that you are going to be losing your baby forehead. It knows that you are going to be not so much focused on conscious associational thinking as in emotional reaction. It knows that, and it also knows about sexuality. That's in your DNA. Your DNA does come from mommy and daddy, but it's not limited to mommy and daddy. It could come from anywhere, through mommy, through daddy, anywhere on your genetic time track. Not just your grandparents, but their grandparents, their great-grandparents. Where does it come from? It comes from someone who actually lived in your historic past. And that's true for all of us. We represent not just our own lives, but we represent all of our ancestors, all of them. It's all happening right now. Understanding something more about yourself than you know right now is honoring the ancestors, as well as mommy and daddy, and as well as your past. In the Christian Bible, one of the major demands is honor thy father and thy mother. Okay, folks, that's good. Yeah, honor them because they gave you the form that began you from conception and guaranteed automatic changes throughout your structure and function during your life. Honor your ancestors, and you don't know really who they are. You don't know how far back your little brain is remembering. How many thousands of years? How many hundreds of years? How many hundreds of generations? You're you right now, but I, me, myself, my identity comes from a long genetic line, and each one of us, by empowering ourselves to create a positive possible future, is doing what generations past have wanted to do and did or didn't do during their own lifetime. Actually, from a DNA point of view, nobody really dies. If their DNA continues to go on through future generations, well, think about it, and you'll hear more about it. What if everyone who is on your past track is alive in you, and that you have the opportunity to transform their struggles in life their fears, their pain, their suffering, their hopes, their desires, their purpose as individuals. And we all have that opportunity. As we get better, all of the people on our genetic track get better also. And their influence is still working away in our memory cells. So, ... all of that's very interesting and probably true. So, wouldn't it be wonderful if you understood for yourself what your structure meant and means in your life today, and how, as a little child, how as an adolescent, how as the person you are right now, you could do it better and more easily. So, in this series, you'll be knowing more about your structure function. You'll be knowing more about your emotional time track as you go from the present, either into the past or into the future that you want to create. And you will have very specific things that you can do to bridge your stress in the moment in order to function most effectively as the yourself you have become. Your me is always there, the incredible power of the little child to learn, to adapt, to become. The incredible value of the sex role information which you're going to be dealing with, we all got to deal with as adolescents. What did the structural changes mean? And they mean something in each of our three bodies, our baby, our adolescent, and our right now in the mirror self, are telling you something, telling us something about how to create the oneness that we want, as opposed to the separation which we do not desire.